Hello everyone, my name is Deepak and I'm a tax code advisor. In today's video, I'll be responding to some of your insurance related questions that were sent to me about the home-based childcare business. And I understand that this is a very unique business and perhaps even have a unique insurance need, so it makes sense to discuss those. So we'll talk a little bit about that and I'll try to answer some of the questions that you guys have asked. So the main question you're really asking me is, hey Deepak, how do we protect ourselves? And that's a wonderful question. I think in any business, we should worry about that. Just getting an insurance is not going to solve our problem. How we operate is important. How we are structured is important. How we respond is important. And then what kind of insurance we have is also important. But I think insurance is perhaps the last one on my list. First thing I would have on my list is how do I structure my business? If my business is not structured properly, that means I'm at high risk and more than likely will get in trouble. So what is not structured properly? Most people who are sole proprietors and they're operating a risky business such as, childcare. Now I know some of you guys probably telling how much damage a small little kid can do. It's not about what damage they can do, it's about what damage you might do to them. So for example, maybe a furniture fell on them or maybe you forgot to do something and that eventually ended up hurting the child. That can be a major liability. So first thing we want to do is focus on setting up a proper entity. Now, what kind of entity we set up? Maybe it's an LLC, maybe it's an S corp, maybe it's a C corp. So one part is what makes sense from a tax point of view, and the other part of it is what makes sense from an asset protection point of view. So depending upon what your needs are, how many kids you have and who lives in your house and what other business you have, what kind of assets you have, where you live, all of those things will matter. And based on that, we will design a program, a system that would make most sense for you. I can't answer that in today's video because I don't know you. I don't know what kind of assets you have. I don't know what kind of business you are in. But assuming you're in a home-based childcare business, I would probably start out with some sort of LLC and then kind of build upon that as needed. So that's my first recommendation. Second recommendation is you need to have a proper operating agreement for that business. And if you don't have one, that itself can be a big problem. So sometime I will see a business owners, they will come in and they will actually have an LLC set up, or they might even have C Corp or an S Corp set up or some sort of partnership set up. And when I ask them for their operating agreement, they don't have one. In matter of fact, nobody ever asked them for one. And the reason why I ask them is not because I want to sit down and review that document with them. It's just I want them to remember that this is something important. During my comprehensive calls, I will always ask them, let me take a look at your SOPs, standard operating procedures. Usually they don't have one. So once again, if you don't have an operating agreement, you don't have a standard operating procedures, then more than likely you're putting yourself at risk. What is your safety plan? In case of emergency, what is your business supposed to do? What does that plan look like? And I'll ask them for a copy of it, and they would say, Deepak, what are you talking about? We don't have one. Well, if you don't have any of that stuff, once again, you're at risk. So remember, you don't have a proper entity, and now you don't even have proper documentation. It starts to get risky. Once you are done with all this basic stuff, now we talk about how do you respond when something happens. So you need to have a proper response document as well. Your people should know it. They should not be calling you when an emergency happens and say, what should I do in this situation? So once again, that's another document you should have as part of your operating procedures. Once you have all that, now we need to talk about insurance. Because, like I said, at the end of the day, it's about reducing your risk. What is insurance? Insurance is your ability to transfer the risk to somebody else for a set price. So if we can reduce that risk without having to pay a whole lot of money, that's good for us. And even if you, let's just say if you have an insurance and you have all of those other documents, you have a proper entity set up, I think your chances of getting in trouble significantly drops compared to somebody who don't have all of that stuff. Okay, enough about the basics. Now let's get to your question, which was about insurance. So first thing you need is something we call a landlord or a tenant insurance policy. So if you own the property where you're operating this childcare center, then you would either have a landlord policy or you will have a renter's policy. In either case, you need to let your insurance company know that you have started a home based business. Because if you don't do that, then that policy might not be valid to begin with. So that's extremely important. Second thing is if you're out of the property for some amount of time, sometime I see, oh, we don't open during holidays, maybe during December or summer or something like that. Make sure you let the insurance company know, because if you're not at that location, your insurance might not actually cover that particular property. So those are the two things you need to make sure. If you're in doubt and you're not sure what it covers, what it doesn't cover, always ask your insurance agent to give that to you in writing. Now, these are the policies you can get pretty much from every single agent. Now we come to the business part. Business part, I don't recommend you to work with anyone. Work with a good broker that works with multiple carriers. I've seen a lot of policies being canceled or the rates has significantly increased in last some time. So you need to be careful with that. So you need to find an agent that works with multiple people, multiple insurance companies, and they're capable of finding you some really, really good rates. So that's extremely important. If you don't know someone, we obviously work with few people that we can connect you with, and they'll be happy to find you a good policy, no matter what your business is. So, what is a business policy? So, the first part of the business is policy is used as business liability insurance. It covers you if someone gets injured in your facility. Your facility could be your, indoors, or it could also be your outdoors. It is not cheap, so don't expect it to be a couple $100 like your renter's policy. It's usually expensive. In matter of fact, the more risk there is, the more expensive it's going to be. And not just that it's going to be expensive, it is possible that a lot of people will say no to you. For example, if you have a swimming pool at your property, if you are running a childcare center, a lot of insurance companies will plain say no to you. In matter of fact, honestly speaking, I think parents should ask for this policy from their providers as well. Because if they don't have this policy, you're really putting that provider at risk. Because if something happens, that provider most likely will go bankrupt, which is not a good idea. So we need to find you a really good business liability insurance. How much it's going to cost you? Well, it depends. It depends on your location. It depends on, what kind of space you have, how old the building is, what kind of precautions you have taken, you know, if there other businesses nearby, for example, let's say if you have a gas station right next to you, insurance could be more. If you have a restaurant, it could be more versus if you have an office building, maybe someone like me providing tax services, it it's less risk and maybe it will be a little bit cheaper. So that's one thing you need to pay attention to. Second policy you need to pay attention to is workers' comp, especially if you have employees at your location. For if you're running a payroll, it's a good idea for you to have a workers' comp. But let's say it's just you as a business owner, you can probably get away without having one because you're not going to sue yourself. But if you have an employee, then you really need to have a workers' comp insurance, even if they're part time, because if that employee gets hurt, that can be a huge liability on you. So please, if you're starting out a business and you're kind of in a budgeting state, do account for that workers' comp policy. Third policy I would recommend is disability policy, but it might not be required because your workers' comp will take care of your employees and your liability insurance will take care of your customers. But disability policy comes up if something else happens outside of your work. So, for example, I would recommend my business owners to have one on themselves. I usually recommend my business owners to have a life policy, they should have a disability policy, and they should have a long-term care policy. Now, we might work with them and design it in such a way that all of those are bundled all in one. But it's important because let's say if you're the one running the business and you get sick and you're not able to work for, let's say, 1 year, what do you think going to happen to your business? especially if you have some capital invested, especially if you have employees. Your business can get hurt really, really bad. So that's why it's important to have those policies. Sometimes people ask me, what about unemployment? Do I need to buy an insurance for that? Well, you don't need to buy a special insurance for that. It's a tax that you pay when you set up a payroll. So every time you run a payroll, you actually pay for unemployment, whether that payroll is for yourself or for your employees, doesn't matter, but you still need to pay some tax out of it, and that takes care of that unemployment. Now, if your employees do something bad and you fire them because of that, they might not get unemployment insurance, or they voluntarily quit, they might not get the insurance. So, basically, they typically get this insurance if they get laid off. So you you don't have a choice. If you're going to run a payroll, you're going to pay tax on it. I also recommend my business owners to offer health insurance to for their employees. There are a lot of reasons for that. Number one, there are some benefits to you, tax benefits to you as an employer, and most importantly, you're going to keep that employee for a long time because you're offering them a great benefit. Now, depending upon the size of your business, it may be required, but for most smaller businesses that have, let's say, five, six employees, by law you don't have to have that, but I still recommend that you should do that. Um, if you do provide healthcare, one of the key benefits you will see immediately that you'll be able to attract better people. Versus if you don't have one, you won't be able to do that. People think that providing health insurance is super expensive. I would say it's not super expensive. It does cost money, and maybe you can pass on majority of that cost to your employees, because if you don't provide it, they're going to go in a marketplace and buy it anyway. So at least get a quote. Give me a call. I'll connect you with the our insurance company that works with our clients, and get a quote. Take a look, see if you like it or not. They provide awesome customer service. If I have any questions, all I have to do is just give them a call. They pick up the phone and talk to me. We used to use a company, and we always have to send them an email, wait for an answer, whatnot. Here, everything gets done right away. So I can connect you with them, and they'll be happy to shop multiple policies and find you something that is very, very competitive. Okay. So some of the mistakes that I see when people are looking for insurance policy. Number one, business liability insurance can be affected by your overall sales. So keep that in mind. The more sales you have, it is possible that your insurance will go higher. And less sales you have, it might be a little bit cheaper. So be careful with that. And that happens especially with businesses that have, let's say, online sales. You will typically see that they can run into trouble. And by the way, for online, if you're doing online anything, then you probably should also have a cyber security insurance policy as well. But today we are talking mostly um, for home-based childcare business, so I'm not going to talk too much about that. Another thing I said is be very careful with your location. If you're doing home-based, I think you'll be just fine. But if you're moving your business into like a commercial facility, then pay attention to who are you sharing your wall with, because that can have a major impact on your policy as well. Our brokers work with multiple insurance policies all at once. So, for example, your workers' comp, your business liability, your life insurance, your health insurance, we can do it all in house. And because we're able to do it all together, we can usually find you a little bit better rate versus if you kind of shop for them separately. At the end of each year, usually insurance companies will audit. They will find out what's the number of employees, what's the payroll look like, what kind of revenue you have. So be aware of that, because if those numbers have changed quite a bit, more than likely that your insurance policy will get affected and you'll see the new rates. So those are some of the things I will pay attention to if I'm looking for an insurance policy. One of the key factors here is do all this search way in advance. When I say in advance, I'm talking about at least 3 months in advance. You don't want to have your permits all ready to go, your grand opening is announced, and now you're waiting for insurance. Because if you wait till last minute, more than likely you're going to pay more than what you would pay otherwise. So just don't wait till the last minute. If you have any questions with insurance related stuff, there's no charge for that consultation. Our people will be happy to work with you and find you a good insurance policy. Why? Because they get compensated by the insurance company. And we work with multiple insurance companies, so we should be able to shop around and find you a good deal. Once again, my name is Deepak and I'm a tax code advisor. If you're a small business owner, you want to save on taxes, you want to figure out how to build massive wealth for your retirement, you want to figure out how to grow your business, how to scale your business, how to protect your business. If you have any of those questions, then give me a call. Book a free discovery call. Let's talk how I can solve your problems. And if you like what you hear, then we work together. All right. Thank you so much for watching this video today. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, put them in the comments and I'll try to answer those for you.